And President Biden is set to hold his first formal news conference in months on Wednesday, the final day of his first year in office. And with the president keeping his distance from reporters most of the year, often ignoring their attempts to get answers for the American people, they'll have plenty of questions they want to ask. Former Congressman Jason Chaffetz is a Fox News contributor. And Jason, he won't just walk into the room and say, OK, I'll take questions. He's going to make some sort of a statement or speech. And I imagine he's going to try to talk about some accomplishments from their point of view that they have. But given the realities of the polls that we see, the fact that to a Democrat, they've all been saying over the weekend, you can see them quoted from Bernie Sanders to Maureen Dowd and others, that something needs to change, that there needs to be a pivot or there needs to be something different. Do you anticipate that by Wednesday, President Biden will be able to announce something like that?
Yeah, I think they have to announce something different, and I think what they're going to do is try to set the stage to culminate around the 1st of March when the president goes and does the State of the Union. I think they'll take a version of Build Back Better, they'll pare it down. They will hopefully have learned the lesson of Manchin and Sinema, that they come up with something palatable. They'll have to rally around that for the next 5 to 6 weeks to try to get something passed, to try to salvage and do something policy-wise. But usually these types of things don't go well for the president. He's not the best orator. He's not quick on his feet. And I think a lot of his style of just going to pre-selected questioners is going to take an awful lot of criticism, and as it should.
I think that comment from Mitt Romney cuts through a lot of it, Jason. 52 weeks of bad weeks. What can they say that is better now than it was a year ago?
They're short on policy victories. It's the policies that have been harming Americans, and these are self-inflicted policies. They did it on day one by, harming us in the energy sector. I would love to see the president asked about immigration. That is as bad as it's ever been, not getting any better, and the president has not taken a hard or direct question on immigration. The vice president has been absolutely no help. The president last week talked about how he's going to do infrastructure and build bridges, but he hasn't been able to build bridges with the United States Congress. What makes us think that, suddenly that's going to be better? That was the whole promise of Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm. The Quinnipiac poll from last Thursday had Biden at a job approval of only 33%. That certainly could be an outlier, but it was also a real wake-up call for the Democrats. Also, in the Quinnipiac poll, handling of the economy, approve at 34%, and that is being shown to be true across several polls. And then this question, divided country, 49% of respondents say he is doing more to divide the country, and only 42% see him as unifying it. And, he really did run on almost every single time he gave a speech during the campaign. He said he was going to run and try to unify the country. Do you think in his mind he has tried to do that?
He probably thinks so in his mind, but the only thing he's done is lurch to the left. He's been much more concerned about Bernie Sanders and AOC than anybody else. But the only way those numbers get so low is when you lose independents, lose centrists, and you lose the base within your own party. You can't just go out and blame Republicans for that. There is nothing that he can really point to, albeit the infrastructure bill, that he can point to where he has worked with Republicans in a sincere and honest way to try to get some stuff passed. He is losing his base, and I think those independents are running to the Republican Party. That's why I think Republicans feel such a surge going into 2022.
Jason, I just want to turn to COVID real quickly, trying to get a sense, different parts of the country, how people are reacting and what people are looking for. There's an op-ed in the Salt Lake City Tribune, that's pretty cutting. Utah leaders have surrendered to COVID pandemic. Here's how it reads now. Were Utah a truly civilized place, the governor's next move would be to find a way to mandate the kind of mass vaccination campaign we should have launched a year ago, going as far as to deploy the National Guard to ensure that people without proof of vaccination would not be allowed, anywhere, end quote. Is there support for that in your state?
No, that is crazy outliers, some far leftists at a newspaper that nobody reads anymore. It's a shame, the decline of the Salt Lake Tribune. That is a radical position that should be absolutely summarily dismissed immediately. That'll never happen in Utah, and thank goodness. It's a terrible, terrible idea. Advocate for the for the vaccine, advocate for the booster. I've taken the vaccine, I've taken the booster. Tell us the positive things, but don't essentially incarcerate people or quarantine them by force in their own homes. That is ridiculous.
Okay. We'll put you down as a no. Thanks, Jason.
Good to talk to you, Jason. Thank you.